First of all, this is a visit that is happening at a very interesting background. I want to go to Professor Cui here. How would you describe the bigger background of this visit against, the trade disputes between China and the United States, China's trade negotiations with the EU in terms of electric cars? When he arrived, he talked about he was convinced that together we can change things. What exactly did he have in mind?
Even also, for both two governments, officially, they just announced it's a reciprocal visit by President Macron to China after Mr. Xi's visit to Paris last year. But certainly, I don't think it's just an ordinary one. If we look at what happened this year for China-Europe relations, to some point, I think to some degree that not so satisfaction for the first half of this especially China-European Union high-level exchange. And of course, now it's time for France to play a leading role to help the stability and even the sustainability of China-Europe relations. Secondly, also now it's in a very, very critical time for the big change of the format for major players. I take a notice that for this visit by President Macron, now United States, some European countries, even Russia, they take a very, very high, attention about this, result and process that. So I think once there are some more, even closer exchange between China and France, certainly it will give some, I think, big influence on current situation for major players. And of course, at the same time, people will, take a very, very big attention about how about China and France, they can reach some, consensus, not only for these bilateral relations, trade, investment, and also even not only about Ukraine. I think most important, how could both China and France, they can find some solution for this global governance or some, very, very important relations for major players.
So from your information, Professor Cui, let me stay with you. From your information, do you think the visit so far, because President Macron is now in Chengdu on the last leg, from the political side of things, he was in Beijing, he was met by Chinese President Xi Jinping, he was met by Chinese Premier, he was met by the country's top legislator, they met the press together, they also spoke extensively at the closing ceremony of the China-France Business Council. Do you think they have achieved the goals they wanted to achieve?
Certainly. I think if we look at, especially from China's perspective, how could we try to keep the consistency of these bilateral relations? If we take a comparison between the last visit by Mr. Xi to Paris and this time Mr. Macron to Beijing, we can find a very, very strong continuity for this consensus and the major goals or even some achievements. Secondly, I think it shows a comprehensive situation for both China and France relations. Especially people will take notice that there is an arrangement for President Macron to Chengdu. I think it showcases a comprehensive and also very, very strong interests from both sides, not only just on government to government level, and also people to people. And also now I think that people, both two leaders, they focus on how could they provide some solutions on the issue of global governance. I think it will give a very clear message that both China and France, and even both China and Europe, they try to keep the stability now for this, relations, especially for global situation.
Business and practical cooperation is a very big part of the trip, as I said, a delegation of 6 ministers and 40 CEOs. According to President Macron, after the visit, he wrote this on for this trip, he wrote this on the X platform. He said, investments, partnerships, and mutually beneficial project. That is our goal with China. And of course, there is also the hot topic about technology transfer from China to France, to other European countries. Arnaud, how do you look at the kind of new trend that we're seeing? Instead of technology being transferred from European companies to China, which was the case for decades, helping China's development. Now it seems that the tide is turning.
Exactly. This is quite interesting. This is a hot topic in France right now because some French media are writing that the relationship has effectively inverted and that France is now the emerging country in the relationship in need of technology transfers from China. And you're starting to see some of this happening. Actually, I wrote about there is the French car company called Renault, and their new model, which is their flagship model called the Twingo, is basically entirely made with Chinese technology now. So they dispatched some French engineers to China. They opened an office in Shanghai to create the concept of the car, the technology. And they chose Chinese suppliers, and the car with Chinese technology is built in Europe. And I think we're probably going to have a lot more of this, and even at the European level, not only the French level, you're seeing a growing recognition of the fact that now Europe needs to learn from China technology-wise, and even set conditions on technology transfers for Chinese investments in Europe. So the tide has definitely turned quite significantly.
Mr. Drochon, during the meeting between President Xi and his French counterpart, President Xi said China is drafting up, of course, the 15th five-year plan, and China and France should seize the opportunities, and I quote, to expand the space for cooperation, strengthen cooperation in such traditional areas such as aviation, aerospace, and nuclear technology, and unlock the cooperation potential in green economy, digital economy, biomedicine, AI, new energy, and other fields. How are the French business community and politicians, of course, look at such opportunities, and what are driving this shifting in trend in your eyes?
Well, I think that for the companies and all the CEOs in France, they are seeing that as a real good opportunity because, France and China are both sides of the Eurasian region. So you have a huge potential in development and economics with the new Silk Road, for instance. So I'm pretty sure that if you go on a private company domain, they are seeing that as a good news. I think it's a very good news to see France and China to expand their cooperation on those areas like nuclear energy, as you said, health research. There's already some topics and some domains where you have this kind of relationships. I know that Sanofi is now working with China as a plan for producing vaccines in China for China. Sanofi, the big health and research center of France. And also on nuclear energy, we know that France and China is working and still wants to work. But the problem is that I think France is in a global strategic situation where you have geopolitical tensions between China and the United States, for instance, economic tensions also. So France has to find its role, its role in this situation. So that's the real interesting thing, is that Macron, I think, is understanding the role of France in this domain, in this area. But we have to get the mean for that. So the problem is more, is France able to get the economical mean to go with China if we don't change, for instance, the financial system, if we don't change a kind of logic And we have to see in the long term, and I think it's that's the real challenge to think in terms of long terms in those domains.
Yeah. Professor Cui, how do you also observe this new trend, and how is this impacting the dynamics of bilateral relationship, and what would be the biggest obstacle if this is going to sustain?
Sure. As we know now, there is a very, very important background for this visit by President Macron. Is China just launched the 15th five-year plan. Undoubtedly, because the principle for this five-year plan for China is try to reach a high-level, opening up and a high-level international cooperation. So what does it mean for the high level? I think that it shows that China will try to find out more autonomy to decide the policy or some steps for this process. But at the same time, to open the door, especially trade investment, it could be a very, very important opportunity for most European investors and companies, especially for some sectors like servers and for insurance and the banking. I think that all of these sectors would be very, very, important for the bigger requirement from European side. Another, I think, important message from this visit by Mr. Macron is comparing with, some more competitions between China and the European Union, some other. This time, both two countries try to continue this, very, very traditional path to push forward the cooperation. They signed a lot of documents and cover so many, sectors. I think it gives a very, very strong messages to European Union and also other European countries. Once China and Europe, we can continue this, path and also uphold the principle win-win cooperation. Certainly, there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of potentials for further cooperation.
Well, the two leaders agreed, according to Chinese Xinhua, agreed to enhance political mutual trust. So let's take a look at the political foundation of this relationship. From China's readout, for instance, it says Chinese President Xi Jinping underscored that no matter how the external environment may evolve, China and France should always demonstrate the strategic vision and independence of a major country, offer each other understanding and support on issues concerning core interests and major concerns, and safeguard the political foundation of China-France relations. From the French side, it is said that France values its relations with China, it firmly upholds the One China policy, and is willing to continue deepening the France-China comprehensive strategic partnership. This is according to readout from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Arnaud, how do you look at the progress or the achievement, the outcome of this state visit in terms of solidifying mutual trust? Do you think we have come closer a little bit on this very important foundation?
So first of all, let's remind the foundation. I think it's always important. So it's really rooted in de Gaulle, who in 1964 was the first Western leader to establish diplomatic ties with China. He understood that China couldn't be ignored, and also, most importantly, he wanted to showcase that France was speaking with an independent voice, because at the time, no other Western country was recognizing China, and he wanted to, break with that and show that France was an independent player. And I think that is in many ways what Macron is also trying to demonstrate here with his commitment for the China relationship. He wants to show that France is not merely following the US, but is speaking with its own voice with China. Is he succeeding at demonstrating that? To some extent, but I think he is also more constrained structurally than de Gaulle was. France is in a more difficult strategic position than at the time. So, just for instance, at the time de Gaulle wasn't in NATO when France is in NATO now, so that constrains France. Of course, France is less powerful technologically than it was at the time relative to the US and so on. So Macron has a more difficult job than De Gaulle in many ways, but he's trying to do the same thing. And is also, by that effort, trying to position Europe as a whole into an independent pole. He's always advocated for European strategic autonomy. That's been his main call since for years. He hasn't exactly been successful at establishing that, of course, but at least he's trying.
Mr. Drochon, from the perspective of helping France gain or helping Europe gain its strategic autonomy, what does having a good, stable relationship with China mean?
Well, I think there's something very important in all that has not been mentioned very specifically, is that I think France and other countries, but France especially maybe because it has nuclear power and also nuclear weapons, and is part of the United Nations Security Council, is that there is the fact that China is now controlling the production and extraction of rare earth. This is essential for the economy. It's essential also for weaponry. And it's a real strategic issue. And China has this advantage to control this kind of domain in economics. And France has the interest to have a good relationship with China, just to be sure that this kind of technologies, the technologies depending on the rare earth metal is, artificial intelligence, all the electronics, all the, weaponry, and also the economics in general. So that is very crucial, because now the United States, for instance, is is investing a lot in rare earth, just to compete with China, and they give themselves 4 years to be able to be independent in a sense. And after that, it would be quite a very serious situation. So, this kind of relationship and the Macron's visit. I don't know if Macron is only visiting China for that, but it's shaping the strategic situation in a sense. So I think it's something very important to have in mind.
Professor Cui, would you like to comment, or if you would like to add on these points?
Yes, I think that we just talk about the continuity for the relations between China and France. I think it's an important thing for both the countries to promote this strategic dimension for these bilateral relations, because us Chinese understanding that the European Union or Europe always very, very valued partnership to China, but not only just for this economic and trade relations, especially for some strategic issues. But now, within European Union, France is a very, very right, players or a kind of a partner for China to promote this dimension for strategic or some other. But of course, I think at the same time, both two countries need to also deal with some even difficult issues. Just like we mentioned that before visited by President Macron, we find that some debate or some voices from European side on some even traditional difficult issues with China, like Taiwan or Ukraine, some other. But I think that now the big issue for both China and France is, yes, they need to keep strategic dialogue and to promote the mutual trust on this level. But at the same time, they will have to make clear that on some big issues they are different. So I think now it gives a very more complex situation for these relations. Now, how could we try to keep a cooperative foundation for relations, but at the same time, we need to pay some more attention. We have to invest more to deal with some more concrete, difficult issues.
Is the Taiwan question, for instance, is that one of the issues where we agree with each other more or we disagree with each other more, Professor Cui? Because the French side did say they firmly adhere to the one China policy, that is also according to the Chinese readout. What does that sentence mean for China?
Of course, I don't hope that this issue become obstacles or difficulties between China and Europe. Because as we know, for a long time, the Taiwan issue is not an issue on the table between China and Europe, because we have resolved it once we have these diplomatic relations. But now recent years, not only just because of factors from the United States, and also because some even personal reasons for some European politicians, they put issue on the table. I think now China showed a lot of patience to deal with the issue with Europe. But at the same time, I think the European side should make clear that it's a very, very big co-interest for China. So should be careful to do something or to speak out something. Because anyway, I think that especially now, some people in Europe try to connect this Taiwan issue and the Ukraine issue. I think it's a totally nonsense for Chinese side. So how could we deal with the issue, not only just in the name of one China policy? I think according to Chinese perspective, there will not be any one China policy once you deny one China principles. So we could find out the very, very strong connection between one China principle and the so-called one China policy. Otherwise, there will be some, I think, unfortunately, maybe more, frications on this issue.
Yeah, this is a very sensitive issue. Let's just touch upon the Ukraine issue, because the two leaders did talk about that. On the Ukraine issue, President Xi Jinping stated that China supports all efforts that are conducive to peace and will continue to play a constructive role in the political settlement of the crisis in its own way. China supports European countries in playing their due role toward the establishment of a balanced, effective and sustainable European security architecture. Arnaud, do you think China's expression of support for, in this matter, do you think that is as much as what China can do? Because Europeans always seem to think that China can do more but is unwilling to do more.
Yeah, I mean, China actually has proposed to do more. If you remember, they even had a 12-point peace plan in 2023, which was actually, looking back now, given the current situation in Ukraine, that was a very good plan. It's, if it was accepted with the same conditions, today, I think European leaders would probably go for it, but it cannot be anymore because the situation on the ground has changed quite substantially. The tragedy is that within less than 24 hours at the time, it was rejected. So I think there is this myth that is being developed in Europe that. China doesn't want to help, that Europe reached out and China is refusing and so on. But actually, it's more the contrary is true. China reached out to help, and then it was rejected by Europe. So it is a very difficult issue. There is no denying that it does create tensions in the relationship. I think there is a lot of illusions on what China can do in Europe. Effectively, what many European leaders are saying is that it should it should destroy its relationship with Russia in favor of Europe, which China is obviously never going to do because Russia is its biggest neighbor. It doesn't want to enter into war with Russia on behalf of Europe. It will make no sense for China. But China can help constructively if it's in its own interest, in its own way. But Europe, doesn't like the way China wants to have. That is more the issue.
That set aside, we still have about two minutes left. I want to go to Mr. Drochon. Taking the whole trip together, how would you overall rate this visit, especially in the context that two more important European leaders will probably visit China early next year as well? So at what juncture are we at this moment?
Well, we are at the crossing point because, as I said, the international tensions are very high on different levels. I mean, it's important also to have in mind what Japan recently said about the fact that on the Taiwan issue, for instance, and the tensions between China and Japan and the NATOization. I don't know if we can say that, but the fact that NATO now is expanding also on the Pacific side. So I think it's a very important step. And I mean, to see that there is dialogue, at least there is a dialogue between, European unions, countries of European unions and China to settle something which would be the base for a new architecture, international architecture of mutual development. Because the only question is there going to be a win-win relationship? What that China is calling for, but the problem is that you have the kind of geopolitical view on the side of the Western countries mainly. So this question of the win-win relationship and a new architecture permitting peace through development, that is what the Schiller Institute is calling for since a long time. So I think it's a good step, but we have to look at the broad situation, the whole situation, and see what will happen also on the American side and the coalition of the willing side, because France is in between. You can't be on the coalition of the willing, party for calling for Russia to completely, be the loser of the war, and saying that the war has not been provoked in Ukraine. It has been a provoked war. So
we have to leave
that
it
is
there.
a good step.
We have to leave it there. Yeah, thank you so much. My three guests, Arnaud Bertrand, Sébastien Drochon, and Professor Cui Hongjian. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing on behalf of the whole team. Thank you for watching. You've got The Point.